Hi, and welcome to this episode of the DC Life podcast. Today, we're going to chat with someone about something in the life of our church. Today, we have another one of our Getting to Know You podcasts where we hear the faith journey story of someone from DC. And today, we have in the studio the wonderfully creative Jess Hunsperger.
Hi.
Welcome, Jess.
Good to have you.
It's fun to be here.
So, Jess, you're an occupational therapist. You're married
OT.
to a... Yes,
That's right.
You're married to a husband with a very exotic accent. You've got two beautiful children, and you live on a hill with very enviable views to die for. It sounds pretty perfect. Life must be good.
It is good.
That's good.
Generally.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about it. But let's start at the beginning. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, specifically at the Modern Mothers in Brisbane, but grew up on the Bayside, so over near Wellington Point.
So north side?
East
Well,
side.
east, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
You need a lesson in geography.
No, I don't.
Georgie.
East sider.
Yep, on the Bay.
Tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I obviously have a mother and a father and a younger brother. So there's just the two of us. I was really fortunate, the family that I was born into. My dad is a great teacher and loves explaining things and just felt like I learnt so many things early on. And Mum was also an OT, so she's great with kids, great with activities and craft and sport. And so, I had a wonderful start to life.
So what was life like at the Bayside? What, did you go to school?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Redlands College. I really enjoyed school. Went to church close by as well. It was all quite idyllic in some ways, I think. We liked being near the water as well. Lots of nice days there.
Sounds good. So what about after school? What about university?
So I guess I moved over a bit more towards Brisbane. I went to UQ and studied OT. I really enjoyed that. But I guess branched out into the greater Brisbane area. So that was exciting.
And so it sounds like you did have a lovely childhood and grew up with a great family. Did you get along well with your brother?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely times where he's almost 4 years younger than me. So there was definitely a phase where I felt like he was the annoying younger brother and why was he copying me? And Mum would say, it's because he just wants to be like you because he thinks you're doing great things, you know.
Typical mum response.
Yeah. But I think always very much loved and cared for each other. And I think once we kind of got through those years when we were in childhood, they weren't too bad. But very close from then on and really support each other well and really respect each other, I think. So, really enjoy having a brother.
Tell us, do you have any hobbies? Like, did you learn from a young age, like, certain things you liked to do more than others?
Yeah. I've always had a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests. I like music, obviously play piano, and I used to like writing music before I had kids, so it's a bit more difficult now. I love sport, I love outdoors things. I used to always do a lot of running and love mountain climbing and camping and road trips. And I love craft things, any kind of sewing or cooking or you name it. I'll give it a go. Yeah.
What about long walks on the beach?
I do like long walks on the beach. I like long walks in most places. I also love the beach. Absolutely.
So when did you first get to the point where you knew Jesus and developed a relationship with him?
Yeah, so my parents were really faithful in teaching me about God and about the Bible from day dot. And that made a big impact on me. Particularly my dad had a really, really high view of the Bible and the authority of Scripture. And that was largely impacting. And Mum just really faithfully read the Bible with us every day and prayed with us and had a wonderful example. But I think it was when I was 7, I think the gospel had been presented at Sunday school at my church, and I was really impacted then. But I wanted to go home and pray with my mum because she had been so important to me in my faith. So we went home straight after church and knelt beside my bed, and I remember just feeling really overwhelmed with how lost I was, and that I was so far from God, and there was just nothing I could do to fix that myself, and feeling really desperate to fix that and really urgent. So, prayed and confessed my sin, and that I wanted to be forgiven through what Jesus had done on the cross for me, and I wanted to live for him and wanted to follow his direction in my life, and for him to be the Lord and to call the shots. And I remember just feeling really peaceful and really happy. So that was a really great moment, and it's really, I can really still feel those emotions, and I think it set into motion a number of things as well. And I had a really early, passion for the Bible and wanting to read it all the way through when I was in primary school, and for evangelism and just wanting to tell everyone about Jesus, wanting to invite all my friends to Sunday school, and so it went along kind of like that for quite a few years.
So you were 7.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I definitely remember, I think that was definitely the point for me.
Defining moment.
Yeah.
And since that point, what was the faith journey like? Like, was it static? Did you have ups and downs?
Yeah, I think so. It went along really well for quite some time. I was surrounded by really great people, and I feel like God's just been so good and really gracious to me all through my life. And it's just a story of His goodness woven through the events. But when I was in grade 5, I kind of mapped out my life goals, as one does.
As a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I'm a bit of an old soul. But yeah, so already, at that point, the first one was I just wanted to study the Bible. I wanted to really dedicate my life to knowing God, and I really wanted to go to Bible college. And then I wanted to marry a Christian man who really loved God, and I wanted to travel wherever in the world that God wanted us to serve and to tell people about him and to serve him. So I was on a good track. I think there was a first, another defining moment happened when I was in grade 9. I had done very well the year before in grade 8 and ducked the grade. And so then in year 9, my English teacher, there was a situation where I had gone first for an oral presentation, and I'd sat on the floor and I'd been marked down because she couldn't hear me. And I clarified, is there another reason, or is it purely that? And she said, you would have got an A+, but I just couldn't hear you. So everyone else after that sat up on the table. But anyway, we went to the parent-teacher interview, and my mum came with me. And the statement that just rang in my heart after that was that I expect you to achieve perfectly, and if you don't, it means you're not trying. And that personally offends me. And I think that kind of clicked something in my mind and in my heart, that my value was really a lot more linked with my achievement than I'd realised. So the thing that my parents had always taught me before then was that I must always just try my best. So, but now it's like if I wasn't doing my best, if I wasn't achieving perfection, I wasn't trying my best. So I wasn't doing what my parents had taught me to do. Yeah. So I guess to put in a gentle and lowly reference, like seems to be the cool thing at the moment. I have a very lawish heart, and I think that fed that lawrishness so much more, and it really put an emphasis on all my relationships. I think that I then felt I had to achieve to be valued. But also my relationship with God. And I think it was many, many years until I really pinpointed that and really felt freed from that. And that was, in my 20s, but maybe we'll get to that later. So there was that. But then I think through the rest of high school, kind of parallel to that, I was still going along well, inviting my friends to youth group. And I guess the next kind of moment after that was I was in the summer break between grade 11 and grade 12, and I'd been doing study of religion, and I had been studying Roman Catholicism and particularly the doctrine of purgatory, which I really loved. I loved studying other religions and Christianity and the history, but I guess after speaking to a number of people in the Catholic Church at the time, I felt a little bit disillusioned by what I was hearing, and that this was still a thing and still being believed. And so I guess inconveniently in grade 12, when I was extremely busy, I was doing every possible extracurricular activity at the time, and busy every day, every night, and serving at church and youth and doing a whole bunch of things. But I inconveniently decided now is a good time to kind of go through that big questioning your faith and making sure this is definitely what I believe. I didn't want to be somebody who had just accepted what my parents said at face value. I knew that if I wanted to tell people about the gospel through my life, that I wanted to know absolutely sure that this is absolutely what I believed, and that there was a foundation for it, that it was logical. So in term 2, I very consciously decided to stop reading my Bible and to stop praying, which is a very dangerous thing. And I realized that at the time, but I thought there's no other way to have a objective checking if I'm still praying. How am I actually going to check out other religions and make sure this is right? So I told God, well, it's going to have to be it for now, and I'll come back hopefully, but we'll see. So did a lot of research into other religions, read a lot, thought a lot, didn't pray. And I think, very early on, I could tell the difference. And I actually felt, I didn't tell anyone about this, by the way. This was kind of a secret undercover mission. So it was kind of happening in the background. But I ended up feeling quite, numb to the world around me, and quite, it was almost, I think, a pseudo-depression, in that I felt very kind of flat and like things weren't really real, and
a bit disconnected.
Yeah. And I started, I believe, having quite a bit of spiritual attack as well. And I had thoughts about, that would pop into my mind, you should kill yourself, you should. And I was like, where's this coming from? Like, I'm fine, I'm happy. Like, I've never had these kind of thoughts or problems before. Anyway, it all basically came to a head where I was school captain, and I had to do a oral presentation, basically, or a short message on chapel at the end of term 2. And it had to be about John 14, verse 6. That's what the chaplain had decided. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And I was like, how am I going to speak on this? This is hypocritical. I don't know if this is what I believe. But there was sort of a deadline, and I had to kind of nut out what I thought by this point. I didn't want to say things that I didn't think were true. So I'd started writing this speech, and I was like, I don't know if I agree with this right now. Anyway, so basically it kind of came to a head where I literally had to write this speech, and I was presenting it the next day. And there was also a pivotal person in that time was one of my Sunday school teachers that had a similar experience to me, but had travelled all around the world and literally tried a whole bunch of religions, including tribal religions in the back of Africa and all sorts of things, and a very intelligent man. And he'd just come back and shared his testimony, and I was like, okay, this man's switched on. He's tried all the things. I can take a bit of what he's saying here. I respect this, yeah. But I'd also really clearly found the difference to me, and that the Christianity versus other religions, where they're trying so hard to get to God and to make themselves right, and obviously with the gospel, Jesus has done all that. There's no way we can do it ourselves, and that very much rang true to me as well. But I wanted to be absolutely sure. So the night before, I'm up writing my speech, and I got to the point where I was like, God, you have to show me if you're real. Like, you have to confirm this to me. I really want to know in my heart if you're actually real and you're actually here and you are the God of the Bible and this is true. So I decided that I would go to bed, even though I hadn't written my speech. And I just lay there in the dark and I prayed. And I said, God, if you're real, would you show me? Would you convince me? And he did. And I guess that's a very personal experience and hard to describe, but it felt very, overwhelming in a good sense, that I felt, in one sense, really terrified with God's presence and how big and amazing he was and how tiny I was and so imperfect and so doubtful, but also a real sense of his grace and that he wasn't just going to smite me for questioning his existence, but that he really had made me and wanted me. So anyway, I got up at 4 a.m. and wrote my speech, and I talked about the absence of God and the presence of God, and a lot of people really responded to that, and so that was a big part. And so moving on from there, I guess threw myself back into ministry and finished off school and went into uni ministry, as well as a lot of things at church with music and youth. And so I was leading a lot of Bible studies and discipling a lot of people, and that was great. And I think, after quite a few years of that, I think I was having a lot of investment into me. People were discipling me as well, and hearing many, many Bible talks a week and many Bible studies a week. But I felt a really strong sense that I didn't feel really personally that God really loved me, and there wasn't a really a warm, subjective sense of that. It was very in my mind, and I knew all the right doctrines, or so I thought
it's a head thing.
But it was very in my head, and I would tell people God really loves you and he loves you personally, but I would go away being like, I don't feel it. Yes. So I guess that kind of leads on to the next part. Shall I keep going?
Keep going. It's great.
Tell us a bit about your chosen career in OT.
Yeah. Yep. So
Got you into that.
Well, my mum is an OT, and so I was absolutely sure that that's absolutely not what I wanted to do. Didn't want to be just like my mum. I wanted to be my own person. So I got to grade 12, and I'd had a lot of people making suggestions about what I should do, and I had a lot of options, which was great, but sort of paralyzing as well. And I think, at the time I really just wanted to go to Bible college. I didn't want to study anything particularly. But over some time of praying about that and seeking counsel from my parents particularly, it turned out that I am a lot like my mum, and that I would like to help people. Actually, the other jobs that really drew me were things like being a pilot and being an architect. They were the two that I really strongly thought about. But I thought, listen, if I have one life, I can choose what to do with it. Do I want to be designing someone's fancy house, even though I would love that and it would be so fun? Or should I help someone who's really struggling and help them to lead a maybe more fulfilling or a more, a less painful life? So here I am. And a lot of those other pursuits are hobbies.
And so what kind of work do you do in the occupational therapy field?
Yeah, so I work in child and youth mental health.
Yeah, cool.
And I particularly love this area because you really get to talk to people about really what's the most important thing to them and really the deepest part of their lives. And you get a chance to talk and speak into people's motivation, their hopes, their desires, and their real sense of hurt and pain and frustration and failure. And I really see it's a privilege to be able to lead people more towards the path of fullness that God made us to have, in a full life in all aspects. Even though I can't talk specifically about my faith, I can point them in that way, and I can also, I guess, be the shoulder for them to help handle and bear their pain, and to help deal with the experience life has thrown at them, and some of that sinful mess around them, that I can, I guess, be a loving and a calm and a joyful and a hopeful presence for them. So I find that to be really meaningful for me. Yeah.
Great. Now, you haven't always been a Hunsperger, have you?
No, I have not. I've been a Cooper previously. Easier to say.
When and where did Joel cross paths with you?
Yeah.
Jess?
Well, this is an interesting point because, yes, obviously Joel's from Switzerland and I'm absolutely not. I can tell by my more Ocker accent. So when I finished uni, it was interesting. I actually went out west to some friends. I'd done a placement out in Charleville and I was actually practicing with the music team. I was going to be playing on the band the next morning. And so we'd done our rehearsal and we went down to the creek afterwards and we're jumping into the river in the dark. The music team. That's what you do in the country. And I overshot my flip in the dark and didn't see where the bank was, and I smashed my arm into the bank and broke it quite nicely. So basically this meant I ended up having 6 months before I could work because it was my right hand. I couldn't drive, I couldn't write, I couldn't do anything. Wow. I was in a dynamic splint doing exercises every half an hour for months. So this meant that I had all this time suddenly to reflect on my life choices and to think about my future, and I'd spend hours down at Wellington Point praying and reading the Bible, which was great. And God really spoke to me in that time. But I guess the concept of doing mission work really opened up. And I went to a conference down in Canberra at the end of uni where I also was challenged, what's stopping you now from doing missions? You've got so much knowledge compared to a lot of Christians around the world or people in general, if you've grown up in the church. So anyway, long story short, I ended up going over to South Africa for almost 2 years. And it was such a God's leading because there were a number of reasons why I would not have chosen to do that myself. I thought if I want to do missions, I want to go long term. I want to go to an unreached people group. I want to do church planting. And this was just not that. And I thought to be honest, I felt a bit embarrassed that this is what I was doing, going to help kids in Africa, which just sounded so cliche at the time. But I was like, this is absolutely clear that this is what God wanted me to do. So off I went, and I went to a conference first in the Netherlands, and we were put in groups. There was about 1,000 people at the conference, and there were 6 people in a group. And I just so happened to be put in a group with this man from Switzerland called Joel. It was actually funny. He had a ring on his right-hand ring finger, and I'd heard that in Germanic countries / some European countries, people wore a wedding ring on the right hand. So I was like, this man's married, like, cool. Anyway, but it was funny already. And we had like a thing where they acted out Mission Impossible kind of, and you had to go through all these different things in your group and challenges. And it was just funny because we got to the end and the people who were supposed to be maybe Nepalis or something were like, are you two married? You two together? We're like, no. But it was kind of, prophetic in one sense. Anyway, so we did that, and then we did 4.5 months of mission discipleship training in South Africa. And we were put in the same team for rural outreach as well. And I guess I was just really impressed with Joel's character. He had just really clear integrity. And was so committed to God first and foremost. He'd sit out in the rain every morning, rain or sunshine, to read his Bible, even when everyone else didn't, even when there was occasions where I stayed in bed and I'd found out that he'd been out there, and that just impressed me. And he was just very kind and very helpful. And so it all went from there.
So how did you get to the point where you decided, hey, I'm going to marry him? And then you had to choose where to live, which is a big decision when you're in South Africa or in even the Netherlands. And then he's from Switzerland and you're from Australia.
Yeah. So we did it's a long story. You have to ask me in person. But there's such a thing as social policy, SP, in the organisation that we went with. And so we weren't allowed to officially start any kind of relationship while we were together. So it was all very dramatic. But on the last morning before he was flying out back to Switzerland to do his army service, and I was staying in South Africa for another year at least, working with children who had HIV and AIDS. And we stayed up all night and talked and decided that we would actually, well, we hadn't talked anything about how we were feeling, really. We'd written some emails to each other in the email room, this little room, and we'd, write some messages on USB. I had a concussion while I was there. There's lots of stories. Anyway, but... we talked and said, okay, we're going to Skype in a week and we'll think about it in a week and then we'll talk. So anyway, we talked and we decided very quickly that if this was going to be anything, it was either all or nothing, because it's a massive commitment to be Skyping someone on the other side of the world with terrible reception for at least a year.
Yeah, we know.
I know, I remember your testimony. Yeah. Anyway, so we did that basically. We decided, honestly, in a couple of weeks that we were going to get married. And so he did his year of service in the army in Switzerland. I stayed in South Africa in a township there. We did long distance. Then at the end of that, I went to Switzerland and Joel proposed. We got engaged.
On the Swiss Alps?
Kind of, yeah. The next morning we literally went up to one of the highest points. Oh my goodness, I can't think of the name. Joel's going to kill me. No. It's more up the north. His family's from near Zurich, on a farm. So we went there the next day and had photos there. But so we decided quickly and then, came back and planned the wedding, got married in 6 months. And he moved to Australia the week of the wedding and there we were. I couldn't speak German. That was the main reason why we came here. I was going to learn German though, and then we were going to move back, but God had different plans.
So you didn't come back to Wellington Point. You sort of came out to the country, and you found us, DC.
I did,
and you must like us because you guys travel a bit.
We do.
So what brought you to DC, and then what was that story like?
Yes, again, it's a long and complicated story. I'll try and say it as quickly as I can. We got married. We were living on the Bayside, and within 3 months I was pregnant, and I get ghastly ill when I'm pregnant. I have hyperemesis gravidarum, so I was just out of it. My parents had to take time off work to look after me. Renting a place there in Thornside. Basically, they wanted to sell it. We were almost very close to buying it. In the end, we didn't. The Mozzies were insane, and Joel was just getting hacked to pieces. He's so delicious, that Swiss blood. And anyway, just a string of events, and God just made it really clear that we should buy this house, which was not what we were planning on doing by any stretch of the imagination.
No, Calbar, and it's a little bit far away from where you were living.
Yes. So again, that's another long story, but we felt absolutely sure this is what we had to do, even though it was a bit crazy. And so we had to think about which church. We were looking for a church that held the Bible in really high regard, that it was reformed in its teaching, complementarian, and very missional, and very community oriented. My pregnancy, I guess one of the main things that I'd learned out of that was that I really am not independent. I need to really rely on others and community. God's put those around me on purpose. So we were very kind of primed to join DC. So we went there on the first Sunday that we moved out to near Calvar, and I think we talked to a few people, and I think they probably thought we were a little bit crazy and weren't coming back. But we were back. So as soon as we moved, back. There we were. So that's how it started.
That's great. Tell us about, you mentioned community and how you need that, as we all do. Tell us about your experience in joining one of our MCGs, Missional Community Groups. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, really great. I think, it really did fit with a lot of the thoughts that we'd been having, but it was a further extension, I guess, than what we'd seen in other churches, and we were really, I think, excited by that. There was always... There's always going to be some little bumps in the road when you're adjusting to how things work and who's who. And especially because we'd both come from churches where we'd gone the rest of our life, and we're used to everyone knowing us and knowing what we can do and what we are like and how, maybe committed we are and things like that. So it was a process of kind of learning, getting to know people. But we found it to be really, really beneficial and a big blessing to us. And we really enjoyed the community that we felt in, and I guess just that kind of life-on-life discipleship of watching people's stories up really close and hearing personally what God's doing in their life each week rather than just, sporadically. Yeah.
So these days, to round out your faith story with us today, what's one of the most challenging things you find in seeking to faithfully follow Jesus? And also, what's one of the things that brings you the most joy?
Yeah. I think one of the most challenging things would be just being a mum, which sounds kind of cliche, but I guess of all the things I've done in my life, the thing that just smacks my sin in the face is just being a mum. It's just a constant, and it's just, you just see yourself and you see how sinful you are. You see the reality of your true colours in the day-to-day. So that is the ongoing challenge to me. And I guess the other part, the real sweetness. I think one of the things in South Africa that really that God really worked in me was just the personal nature of my relationship with Him, and I really kind of finishing that off that I felt really loved and really His close presence with me, and the real sweetness of that, and the sweetness of Him really reaching in and meeting the felt needs of my heart, and that need to achieve, to be accepted, and feeling his grace and the liberty from that. So I feel like it's a constant journey of being freed from all the little things that I pick up that are really wrong theology, and I take them on board, and God just gently smashes them. And I think just the wonderful glory of what we have to look forward to, and the longer I spend time with Jesus, the more I'm just so excited to be with Him forever, and just the real beauty of heaven and Jesus and who He is, and that just keeps me going. I just love it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, how great is that? Such
a cool story, Jess. Thank you for coming in and sharing a bit about your story, your faith journey. Love it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like more information about what's going on at Disciples Church, check out our website or email us at podcast@disciples.org.au if you have any questions or feedback. Thanks for listening in. We'll catch you next time.